Welcome to Live from the Heart podcast. My name is Anne-Claire Meret. I help beautiful beings feeling empowered to create their lives. I coach, teach, create programs, write books, among other things, and I love it. It took me years of healing and coaching, but I finally found a way back to my heart. Today I thrive and help people thrive too. Everything is happening faster and faster. I feel we are being supported in so many ways. I know we can thrive on a collective level. If you want to create from your heart, you're in the right place. Welcome for another episode. I'm very happy this time to welcome Kathy McPaul. Welcome, Kathy.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. I'm super happy that you're here. I didn't know you before having this conversation with you, but I've been following you for a while. This is my dear coordinator in my company, Geneviève, which told me about you last year, and I totally fell in love with your content. I just love how you spread awareness on the options that we actually have when it comes to residencies and places to set up a business and all the choices that we have regarding our freedom of movement. This is wonderful. And your content is very accessible, easy to understand for people who are not familiar or even scared to create something else for their lives. Thank you for accepting to have a conversation together.
No, thank you so much. I'm so glad my content resonated with you and that you were able to find access to it.
I love it. Can you please introduce yourself for those who don't know you yet?
Yes, so I'm Kathy and I run Wanderers Wealth, which is an international consulting firm. And basically what I do is I help people who have a very international lifestyle with the legal logistics of their lives. So this includes their international tax situation, their business setup, bank accounts formation, residencies such as getting a second residency permit or even a second citizenship. So diversifying and making you really an international global citizen is kind of where I help people out with so that they can just focus on, moving abroad, soaking it all in, focusing on running their business. And we take care of like the legal logistics that are usually a little bit more bureaucratic still, a lot of paperwork involved, so we take care of that.
Well, thank you. This is very much needed. And I know a lot of people who are allergic to paperwork.
Yes, I mean, it still exists, it's the world that we currently still live in, so it has to be done at some point, even if people don't plan for it. But the earlier you do it, the more benefits you will gain from it and the more freedom you'll gain as well.
Yeah. You were not always doing that. You were doing something else before, didn't you?
Yes, exactly. I was actually working as a tax lawyer. I come from a pretty academic background and thought that, my life would basically be in an office job and that I would work up the corporate ladder. But once I was kind of done with that, and after 7 years of studying, it felt very much like a bit in prison. I didn't feel that much freedom, and I was also kind of bored of knowing what my life trajectory would look like if I would stay in that corporate world. It didn't give me much option to be creative or, to come up with new ideas because the places where I would be successful, you can very much see how they run and that they're just a certain way that doesn't let you much freedom, much room for individuality. So I decided to take a break from it all. I decided to get clear on my head what I wanted, and I knew I really wanted to go and travel. So I decided to take a gap year. And it was during that gap year, one of my first destinations was actually Bali. And as you know, there are many entrepreneurs in Bali, and everyone will be asking me, what are you doing? What keeps you occupied? And I was like, well, I'm a tax lawyer. And as soon as I said that, everybody said, I need your help. I need help with my taxes. I have no idea what I'm doing. So that's kind of how this all started.
Well, this is great how it unfolds when you find the way to contribute with everything that you are, because you had the skills and you had the wish to be free and to contribute to other freedom beings. And here you are creating your own job, which I find it absolutely marvelous because this is how you make your life a vacation.
Yes. Yeah, it's in hindsight, it's like, wow, it's amazing how everything kind of fell in place. And I was able to still utilize my skills that I had learned in the previous 7 years and still serve in a way that is feels more aligned with me, and that also, serves a clientele that feels very close to me. A lot of my clients are people like me, who live the same freedom lifestyle, who have the same values and want to be just a more international individual.
Yeah. Why do you think this knowledge about how do you think why do you think it's so obscure still? Why isn't it so available, so easy yet?
I think that, a lot of the rules that we currently have, what we have in place, the system was made in previous times, decades ago, and we kind of just kept it. And it was at a time when we were in such an internationalized society as we are now. So it's kind of more like things worked in the past, but just because they worked in the past doesn't mean it's working now. So I definitely think, it's time for the system to upgrade and to see that we're actually very much a globalized society on every single level possible. And that there's need to know more about this information of how to be able to have an international life without so much headache linked to it. And plus, on the other side as well, governments who run this sort of system, they benefit from people not necessarily knowing all of those things. Governments, I see them very much as businesses as well. They want to attract more clients, meaning humans, into their borders. And that's also how they get more revenue. And by not sharing necessarily what the country next door is doing, what benefits the country next door is giving to them, they keep their people happy, they keep their clients happy. So
Yeah, and this is us. We have to do the job to break free. We have to be educated, and you're doing it in a very beautiful way and very articulate that we can understand, even when we don't like paperwork. Um, has it always been easy for you to understand those things?
I wouldn't say necessarily easy, but I am naturally a very curious person, and I want to know why certain things are a certain way. I remember from a very young age, I was obsessed with the idea of like understanding economics and finances and understanding why, if I would have been born elsewhere, I would have had a completely different trajectory of my life and be in a completely different economic situation than if my parents hadn't migrated elsewhere. So just understanding how it all works, I've always been curious about this. And it's, now kind of become my mission to translate it in such a way that other people also understand it, and to make people realize that there are alternatives out there, that just because you were born in one place into one system and you're super familiar with that system, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's all there is. But I want to show that there are so many other systems out there that might benefit you more, that are potentially more entrepreneurial friendly, more tax friendly, and that you're able to take advantage of if that's what you want. And I would never tell someone, you need to move to Dubai where there's like no zero taxes, or you need to move to Panama. I just want to lay out the option and let the individuals decide what feels best for them.
I guess that in your work, there is a lot of things relating to feeling safe inside with your clients. So, are you also a coach and do you also help people find what bring them safety?
That's a good question. I'm not necessarily a coach, although a lot of times on consultation sessions, I do find myself coaching a little bit and helping people discover what it is that they want. Because my goal is also to make a strategy for, the international legal logistics that will benefit them in the long term. So in order for me to be able to produce that, I need to understand what it is that the individual wants. Do they want to scale their business? Are they more attracted to like Europe or Asia, or do they want to live a completely nomadic lifestyle? And I sometimes have to ask them questions that they might not even have asked themselves yet, and it's usually related to even things such as me asking those questions. It's not necessarily because I'm noisy, but it's because some tax incentive programs are limited to a certain age group, or are limited to people from a certain country, or are only available to entrepreneurs. So that's why I usually ask those questions, and also get people to think about where it is that they're at now and where it is that they want to be at, and what the freedom lifestyle looks like to them, without putting, my definition of it onto them, so that we can really explore what options out there are the best aligned for them.
Mm. This is a wonderful work. Yeah. And I'm French, and I noticed that a lot of French people have trouble thinking out of the box because we have so much advantages when we live in France, but also we have a lot of taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question regarding open-mindedness. Do you have some clients which are more open and for whom it's easier to create a life which is out of the borders as we know them when we're born in a country where everything is easy but also very closed? Like, is there places where people come from and are more curious, are more eager to find solutions, and yeah, more open?
Yeah, I would say it's not necessarily tied to a country, or maybe it is, because sometimes I find I do have quite a few German clients. And
Mm-hmm.
as you say, it's like you're used to a system, you've been in a system for such a long time. You hear your parents talk about the system, you hear your grandparents talk about the system, about, how much taxes they have been paying their whole life, how much social security contributions they are allowed to take, or they will receive in the end. And I found that, for example, for me, that I have so many German clients, they're usually more obsessed with the question of, okay, what's going to happen to my social security contribution? What's going to happen to how am I going to get health benefits if I'm going to move to, South America somewhere? And I would say, I don't know, there's other nationalities. I have a lot of clients from English speaking countries. And I would say people from like Australia and New Zealand, even though they also do have social security systems, they're less obsessed with the question. They're way
Mm-hmm.
more like just focused on, just give me the freedom. I just want to, leave this system behind and just go for it. So it's an interesting observation, definitely, to see, that I found like German, Swiss people, they have way more ingrained in them, that they are so dependent on the social security system. And for them to actually realize that, yes, you have been in the system, and the system also, sometimes I think I love to think about it from both ways, from the client's perspective, or like from the people living in the country who have the benefits of social security contributions, and then also from the country's perspective. And it's interesting to see how for the longest time countries have been offering this welfare system where they have to pay taxes, and in return they might get social security contributions. But on the other hand, we're now seeing countries that, especially those that are coming out now with like digital nomad visas and whatnot, where they're clearly saying like, you have to be self-sufficient if you want to come into our country, and you won't receive any benefits. But they're attracting, these new entrepreneurs that are very self-sufficient, that can very well look after themselves, that have designed solutions that go together with their lifestyle. So the country, it's almost like people don't become a burden on the country through that, because you're not attracting any more people who are like relying so much on a social security system, that want something back for their bucks, that they give to the government. So it's a very interesting dynamic that is happening right now. And it's also interesting to see, from my perspective and working together with clients, how much they're fixated on this system that they come from, and how open they are to let go of it and explore new solutions out there.
Yeah. Well, that speaks to me deeply because my fiance is German.
There you go.
So we make quite a couple, French and German, with a lot of benefits that we've had as
Yeah.
employees and not even as entrepreneurs. So we did have a lot of security in the past. And
Mhm.
yeah, to me, what was important in my journey was to start traveling years ago and to meet entrepreneurs and to meet people who have made different choices.
Mhm.
And each one of them, they have been showing me what is possible. And before that, I could not imagine that it would be possible one day for me. And here I am. I live in Costa Rica. I'm changing my residency. I have my own security because I pay for private insurance for now.
Mhm.
And I'm okay with it and I feel safe with it. But it
Mhm.
took me a while. It took me sometimes to meet other people.
Absolutely.
I-
Yeah.
Is it also important?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of people who reach out, and I also do have like a travel account, where I show all of my travels. And me and my partner, we travel quite a lot compared to other nomads, due to my partner's profession as well. And they always ask, how can I live like this? How can I live this sort of life? And I honestly think it's so important, as you said, to be in the right environment, to be surrounded by people who are already living this lifestyle that you are wanting to live, if it is that you're wanting to, break free and move somewhere else. And for me, it was the same thing. Sometimes it's so hard to see a different reality if you're still in your old reality, where everybody around you does have a 9 to 5, or, does have the stereotypical life of, I don't know, having a regular job, getting married, buying a house, having kids. So it's very hard to break out of that if your whole environment around you looks like that. And it's easier to imagine a new reality for you once you surround yourself by people who have taken first steps, who, are maybe already a couple of steps ahead of you and have moved abroad, or at least had a taste of it. And even if it is in this day and age, following someone on social media, I feel like if you just consume that sort of content, you start seeing like, oh, it actually can be a reality for me too. For me, it was definitely the point where I went to Bali and saw all of these entrepreneurs, working from coffee shops and with their laptops. And I was like, man, like everybody here is living this reality. Why wouldn't it be available to me, and just designing and finding solutions that will work for you to live the lifestyle that you desire to have.
Hmm. Yes. And more people are doing it. Is it something that you've seen also happening those last year? Is there more and more people interested in what you have to share and creating the life the way they want to design it?
Yes, definitely. I think when I started out, it was very much considered to be, an outsider. I was very much the crazy person, who quit their 9 to 5 and left everything behind. I literally sold everything, my car, everything I had in my apartment to just go and travel the world. And even when I would talk to people about my business and whatnot, it was never considered as something real. It was almost like, oh yeah, that's a side hobby for her. She's in her phase. She's kind of doing that. And now 4+ years later, people are like, oh my gosh, if you're actually living off this, can make a living out of it, and you're still doing it. Like, how are you doing this? Now they're kind of starting to get more curious around it. Plus, on the other hand, as well, we've had, the pandemic and everyone being able to work remotely. So it's definitely opened up the window of opportunity to so many more people that previously never even considered. And, even corporations had to find solutions to how people were able to work from home and just simply do all of their work remotely. So there's just so many more people now that know what a digital nomad is, that know what remote working means. And it's even become a hype word. It's even, become more normal now, so much so that governments want to attract digital nomads, they want to attract remote workers. So it's been amazing to witness this transformation and to not longer be seen as a crazy person, I guess.
Now they come to you for advice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. I feel like a lot of times when you really live the lifestyle you're desiring to have and you stay in your own power, even if it seems crazy to person, in the end, people will get curious, and you might awaken something in them and from people that you might have never expected that they would be curious and to ask you. It's funny, every time I go back where I grew up and talk to my old friends, that they start, consuming my content or start looking at things, and they come back to me and they're like, maybe I should apply for my second citizenship that I am able and eligible to go for. I'm like, yeah, maybe you should. And they're like, you've really got me started questioning things now there. So it's interesting to see how you're able to um, guide people, who are also earning for more freedom and for more independence in their life.
Yeah. Mm. Having several citizenships is something that you recommend and that you talk a lot about. Can you talk to us a little bit more about it?
Yes, I'm super passionate about talking about multiple citizenships. It's something that, for me, I was kind of raised around multiple cultures. I call myself a third culture kid as well. It was growing up, it was very painful, to be honest, not knowing where I was from, not knowing, uh, where I belonged to. So kind of just figuring out where in the world my place is. But then now, being older and having juggled with that unknown, I realized how it's actually been such a great benefit to me, and how I was able to take the best that each culture had to offer to me and make the best out of it. And that's very much what I teach nowadays, is, to be able to have more options and to pick and choose the best that each country or culture has to offer. And so for me, having multiple citizenships, it really means more freedom, not only more freedom of movement, because you might be able, to get visa-free access to different countries, but it might also mean more financial freedom as well, because a citizenship might give you access to a new economy without having to go through a lot of hassle. You might be able to set up a business in another country without having to go through a lot of hoops. So you might be able to own property straight outright in your name without having to do complicated things and set up more contracts and more paperwork. And it also allows you just to have more options presented in front of you, and not just in front of you, but sometimes even, for your family, for your partner, your spouse, and your future children as well. It's almost like a security, a ticket to more freedom and liberty, I would say.
And how in the world, like, how do you choose where you want to get citizenship in the world? Is it something that you should be choosing from a strategic place, or is it something that you should be choosing from a place of, yeah, one day I could see myself living there, so this is why this country is interesting to me? Like, how do you choose among the possibilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the first citizenships that you should get are the ones that are easily available to you, that you are eligible for, without having to do a lot of work. And a lot of times that is citizenship by descent through ancestry, through your family history, for people, especially for people who are from Europe. It turns out, that you might have had a great grandmother in Italy or someone in Poland or whatnot. Even, for Americans and whatnot, they have a lot of history going back to Europe, and so do like Australians as well. So usually that citizenship by ancestry is the easiest one to obtain and the easiest one to apply for, the cheapest one as well. So even just that, securing another citizenship, for example, in Europe, that opens up a whole new world of opportunities to people who are from the US and people who are from Australia, New Zealand. And even if you already have another European passport, I found that a lot of times people have resistance around, oh, I already have a European passport. Why should I go for another European passport? And the reality is that you just never know what is going to happen in the future. You just never know when, there's political turmoil, there's economical turmoil, and where a citizenship, a second citizenship, might come in handy. And we have a perfect example being Brexit. No one really knew the extent of the effect that Brexit would have. And now we have, a lot of British people were living in Spain, in Portugal, and they needed to secure their access now to have that freedom of movement, to be able to still continue to live in Spain, Portugal, wherever they want to. So a lot of British people now have become Irish citizens as well through Irish ancestry, that they might have had a grandmother that was from Ireland. And that's how easy it can work to actually secure your freedom of movement and to have more stability as well and more options to choose from. So I would definitely start there for people. And then other times as well, you're actually able to get citizenship by investment. If you do have a lot more resources, there are actually places where you can buy citizenship too, and not just buy it outright, but in certain circumstances you can even obtain citizenship by purchasing property. That's a very common one as well. And if that is available to you, I would definitely look also into citizenship by investment options. If you're already going to go and look for properties to invest in, if that's available to you, then why not combine it with securing a second residency or securing a second citizenship with it? And it definitely would be good, if it is somehow related to you. So if you're never gonna go anywhere near that place that you're getting a second citizenship in, you might want to think twice about it. But even if you don't necessarily see yourself living in there, if it's available to you and you're eligible for it and you do have the resources, you should really consider it, because it might open up a whole new world of opportunities. That passport might have, even more visa-free access to different nations in the long term that you didn't even consider. So if it's available to you, you should really consider it.
Mm. Yeah. And we never know what it can open. Thank you for sharing all of that because I moved to Costa Rica for freedom. I
Mhm.
originally wanted to live in Thailand and I had projects there and it was going well. And then COVID happened and I was in Germany and we couldn't go back to Thailand because it was not open. So
Mhm.
we went to Costa Rica and we started right away the residency papers. And we asked the lawyer that we hired, how is it here with taxes? Because our company is in the UK. And she said, you will pay no taxes.
Mhm.
And I looked at her and I was like, really?
Mhm.
Because that's not why we moved here. We moved here for freedom and for the tropics.
Mhm. Yeah.
I had no idea. Well, this is a very expensive country, so obviously we're paying for it because it's not cheap. but but this is awesome. So you never know what doors it's going to open for you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's better to be proactive than having to be reactive. It's better to do the paperwork, file your applications, and secure another second citizenship, another second residency if you are eligible for it, than having to be reactive. Because the reactive situations are usually really bad situations that you find yourself in. You know, it's a pandemic situation where you're not allowed to go back to a country where your partner is in if you have a long distance relationship, and where you're being torn apart for 2 years because you never bothered getting that residency, where, you know, you have a situation like this really bad situation right now with Ukraine and Russia, where you don't countries are literally banning you from applying to get a visa from the countries just because the leader of your country is going crazy, you know, or a Brexit scenario that you just never really saw happening and restricting your freedom of movement so much. So it's really better to be proactive, to reach for those hanging low fruits that are available to you at a time when you're at peace and there's no stress behind it and you do have the resources, than having to be in a really stressful situation where you're super reactive that you just never want to put yourself in, nor your family.
How many residencies or citizenships can people have?
That very much depends where people are from. So, for example, if you are an Indonesian citizen, where I'm currently in Indonesia, you are not allowed to have a second citizenship. There's some exceptions, like for kids and whatnot, but yeah, they're very much not allowed. And we don't even have to go that far. Like Austrians aren't really allowed to have a second citizenship either. So, very much depends where you're from. And if you are from a country that clearly forbids it, where it's clearly against the rules, then I would say still focus on global diversification, still focus on getting a second residency. There's no rules really around, you know, second residencies being forbidden. And second residencies, which are usually longer term residency permits that let you live in a place for 2, 3, even 5 or even 10 years sometimes, they're quite a good security to have around yourself as well. They might just be as good as citizenship. Usually citizenship means that, you know, you're able to vote and whatnot. But even during the pandemic, for example, in Australia, that was one of the most restrictive countries, people who had residency in Australia were still able to go back as citizens, you know, almost the same rights. So if that is the next low-hanging available fruit to you, is a second residency, go for that if the second citizenship option is not there.
This is very good to know. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Can we talk a little bit about companies? Do you help people setting up companies all over the world?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, the company thing goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning as well. You know, people usually stick to the systems that they know the best, that they're most common with. And not because they're really beneficial to them, but just simply because they're more familiar with the systems that they come from. And so many times I meet nomads around the world that have already left their home countries 3, 5 years ago, even like 8 years ago, but they still have their business set up in their old home countries that they barely even return to, that they barely even visit, that they barely even feel connected to. But they've
Yeah.
just left it there because that's what feels the most familiar to them. And they don't even know, what other options are out there. So that's where my work comes into showing them, actually, if you would cut your ties with your old home country and you would set up a business in the UK, like you were saying, or a business, in Dubai, or even now we have Estonia that brought up an e-residency in Europe. And that can give you so more many benefits. And you don't have to pay, these high taxes that you're paying every year to a country that you barely even visit, that you barely take any benefits from anymore. So yeah, that's a big part of what I do, is actually the business setups for people who have an international lifestyle.
Mm. And this is so important because when you have the right business in the right country for you at the right time, you can spread your wings. And I felt it because from the moment that I was not anymore tied up to France, suddenly my business boomed. It was like, oh, finally, I can be myself,
Mm-hmm.
just the
Yeah,
way I am, even if it's not the way I learned how to be. I
absolutely.
I created it.
Yeah, yeah. And I love what you're saying is, I think a lot of times people hear about, like being able to pay low taxes or even being tax free. But once you step into that power, you really realize how powerful it is. Once you realize that you don't have to do your monthly returns, you don't have to prepare VAT returns, or do annual audits and spend so much time every month on your bookkeeping, that you just get to focus on your business and focus on the expansion of your business and reinvesting that money however you see fit, whether it's, going back into the business, scaling your business, or even, you being able to, I don't know, buy a property, buy a car, if that's what you decide for, being able to give back to projects that you've always wanted to invest money in. It's a powerful thing to be able to have more control over the money that you make without knowing that at the end of the day you have to give away a third of it or even half of what you're making.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very freeing thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy, for everything. This is beautiful to listen to, and I hope it's going to inspire a lot of people.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for letting me share.
Do you have something else to share, a message for the world?
I would say that I see a lot of people holding them back, because they are scared of letting go of the system that they know, that they are scared of taking that first leap. And as I said at the beginning, it's putting yourself in the right environment. And in this day and age, that can even be in the virtual world, start listening to podcasts of people that might have already taken that first step of taking the jump and living life on their own terms, whatever that might look like to you. If you want to be nomadic, if you want to be able to work remotely, start listening to it. Start immersing yourself in that environment. If you can in person, that would be fantastic. But if that's not available to you, even in the virtual world, you can do that through podcasts. You can do that through social media. You can even, be part of a mastermind group or something like that. But really put yourself in that environment that you aspire to be in, and things will flow and things will follow from that. It's oftentimes that letting go of what we know best that will then open up new opportunities.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
How can people work with you? What do you offer? Do you have programs? Do you do one-on-one? How do you work?
Yes, all of the above, I'd say. I hang out mostly on Instagram. So my handle is at wanderers.wealth, at wanderers.wealth. And I'm super open as well to DMs if people want to send me a message. I love having chats on Instagram. I also hang out on TikTok quite a lot. I love short video formats and just, getting my message across in a very short time of period. But most conversations happen over on Instagram. And then I do have online courses. I have a mini course. I have our signature program that is really big and kind of shows you all the options that are out there, as well as one-on-one options, consultation sessions if you feel like you want to get more specific answers to your situation, or if you feel like you're just looking for specific answers to a certain circumstance that you find yourself in right now, or that you've been carrying on for way too long and you want to change it. So yeah, that's all available on my Instagram and my website, wandererswealth.com.
And I will add the links so that people can find you easily.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I will be in touch with you because next year I'm moving again. So
Perfect.
I'll definitely be in touch.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All the best for you. And thank you for the magic you're doing in the world.
Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for your presence. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it, like it, save it. You can follow me and connect with me via social media and my website, simply with my name, Anne-Claire Méret. See you soon with more content from the heart.